breath, and why don't we, I was interested in wondering, just getting back into the filmmaking about the selling of the tapes. What was the process like, and I'm sure it was very daunting to begin with, both, in terms of putting together a film and also, being attached to Shannon and everything. So can you walk us through that process a little bit?
Well, it was, we originally started to make a different film, and then when Lisa and Nico gave us this box of high-A tapes, we decided to see if we could craft the film from that footage. And what we realized as we were looking through, that before we started looking through, we were like, well, this is crazy. We'll never be able to. There'll be too many holes in the story. And what we realized was that how thorough Shannon was about filming every detail, the daily sheets that were very cleverly written by Paul, and the clock and the time and the current events and all that. And he really he gave us all the tools that we needed. And not to say that it was easy, and I just give big props to Colleen and Taryn for getting through it and what I find to be an extremely beautiful and experimental film. It's a very strong story, and that's really not easy to do. And I'm so grateful to both of them for doing that. And you talk about what happened.
I think we wanted the film to feel like it felt to watch the tapes, which was really a mixture of seeing these extraordinary things happen that were sort of public but from the inside, and then seeing these incredibly quiet moments when the camera faded up, you weren't quite sure where you were going to be, but at the same time he would orient you, and the challenge was to try and find a way to preserve the lyrical quality in the space that some of his camera work and contained, and as well as move you along. And it was not just these highs and lows, but everything in between that sort of makes up a life. And we worked really hard at that, and then like all films or artwork, you lose perspective. And if Shannon wasn't charming to me at the beginning, he certainly was towards the end, and it was hard to gauge. I guess it was work in progress screenings were incredibly important in order we were attached to some last things, and understanding like the things that we could let go. I mean, there's a lot of people in this room that watched the film with me a lot, and us a lot in the last months, and it was really important because we were really attached, because this is a limited, contained archive, so everything starts to feel really precious, but in order to make the thing sing as a whole, we had to let go of a lot of things, so.
Right.
I'm sorry.
How great was Shannon Hoon?
Yeah.
You don't stay on a project for 10 years without some palpable magic there, so. I don't know what the question was, but I guess what I want to say in this moment is this feeling that's here in this room, and this feeling that we're left with after watching. What we've started to say and address is, okay, what are you going to do with that, and how can you take that and support your friends and family and the people in your life that may be struggling, and just to check in with the people that you love, and we're all here for each other. Yeah.
Okay. Questions from the audience? Comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like blanking on
You know what I miss actually still to this day
No, you can
is
talk about what's not in it.
okay.
I take it back. Ruins, all ruins. Yeah. There was specifically, I would say, musical performances. That was a big struggle. I didn't start out as a Blind Melon fan, sorry, and I think that was kind of an asset because I was really a little more brutal about not being interested in something because it was some outtake of a song that's rare, and I was very just much looking at it from a different and it was a really good balance to have that, and I of course have become, you know, very much a fan over time, but I think the music really needed to serve the story because we didn't want to make a film. It's not a music doc, it's about a person, and so if there was, you know, he was a very, as most artists are, it's very autobiographical what he's writing, and there was really beautiful mirroring between events in his life and then the songs that would come out of him, and so we wanted to make sure it was advancing the story. So we had to cut a lot of songs out of the film that we were, you know, that were beautiful and intimate, and hopefully one day they'll come out in some way.
Sure.
Yes?
Shannon's story really spoke with me as a person who has struggled with addiction, and that seemed like a really big theme in the film. And was that something, as you kept going through the story, was that a message that you really tried to convey?
Well, we felt like we made a very fair and honest portrait of him, and that was our goal the whole time. And nobody had a say in the story we were telling except for us three. And one of the things we were grateful for is when we showed the people who mattered to us, the family and the band, nobody disputed any of it, and everybody really appreciated, you know, the film and didn't ask us to remove anything. And it became clear to us as we were doing it, and then more now than ever when we lose some of our musical heroes, you know, like Chris Cornell, and you lose, you know, the younger people of this generation, Mac Miller and Lil Peep and all these people who are so creative, and you know, we've felt that, like Colleen said, we have an opportunity here to check in on the people we love. And I think sometimes we don't know that people are struggling, and that's the really hard part. And I feel like in this day and age, you know, people are talking more about it, and there's more support groups and things like that. And what we're doing personally is we're partnering up with Music Cares, which looks after musicians in need in any way that they need, but especially addiction issues and mental health. And the fact that we're trying to, you know, let people know that there is an outlet and there is someone that they can go to, and you know, to get back to your question, is like we felt like we made a fair and honest portrait of him, and those are the things that he was doing. And in fact, you know, it's his story. He's telling his story, and we're telling his story for him. And he was struggling, you know, and you know, it's such an awesome, like, you know, funny, great film up for like 3/4 of it, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, right? And you see the timestamp, and the time becomes a character in the film, and it's, you know, again, it's like, and honestly, sitting there and having watched the film so many times, but now we really rushed and scrambled to color correct and to sound mix and like all that stuff, and you know, Sam did an incredible job.
Thank you, Sam Gursky.
Yes.
Where is he? Stand up. And Greg Kobler. And Linda. Where's Linda? Where's Linda?
Yeah.
All these
Our
people
producer,
are like,
our sound.
and Shauna,
yeah.
everybody. There's so many people in this room that
And
does so much.
and it just like, honestly, I mean, this was the best that I've ever seen it right here, and it really moved me. I really was quite blown away by it, and I have to say, like these two, you know, filmmaking is teamwork, you know, and it's just not one person doing it, or, you know, it's like there's a whole collective, and we had a really strong team, and I'm like really honestly amazed at the, you know, the editing and just the beauty of it, and our goal was always to set out to tell, you know, an artful story about an artful person, and I really feel like we accomplished that with a really good story as well. Any other questions?
Yeah, up front?
Joe?
Thank you so much, it was beautiful, and I got so many chills the whole time. I was wondering too if anybody's talked about the fact that he was so ahead of his time on filming every aspect of his life. Like now that's very common, but then
Yeah.
that was really unusual for somebody to commit to that for 5 years like that.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if you guys
Yeah,
have
Taryn's
talked
got
about
great-
that internally or anything like that.
Yeah.
For those in the back, the question was,
Sorry.
did you feel that he was like ahead of his time and just documenting his life in that way? Basically.
Basically.
Yeah.
Well, ahead of his time, I mean, we can't, I think, the thing that's interesting is it's just when that technology became available in that way, and we have the archive to look at, you know, I'm sure, I mean, a lot of films at Tribeca this year, there's films popping up that are these huge archives from that period of time.
Oh, really?
I think for Shannon, what's particularly fascinating also is that he was a public figure, so you have this kind of, you know, this dichotomy between like what the world was seeing, and then you have this ability, or this entry point into this very intimate, raw part. And then he was particularly ridiculous in a way that was shocking to me at times, incredibly impressive. I mean, it was a real intention of his. He was documenting himself and the time he was living in. And I think that, you know, the seeds of the present are always in the past, and the early stages of things, it's very clear he couldn't share it. So I think it's a fascinating exploration of what we're looking for in these things. I mean, he couldn't share it. It was sort of for himself, but maybe it was for this daughter that he was, you know, going to have, or maybe it's like, why are we filming ourselves in this way now? And the biggest question is, who's gonna look through it? I mean, we spent 10 years looking through his stuff and tried to make some sense of it, but I think that we're all amassing these archives as well. And I was thinking about that a lot, of, you know, what's gonna happen to all of it.
I want to add to that. I think, you know, I get what you're saying about like, he was able to, right now we all film ourselves all the time. It's no big deal. You pull out your phone and you film yourself. He was such an early example of someone who like self-documentation, and you know, it wasn't easy. He had to make sure the batteries were charged. He had to have the camera. He had to pull it out of the bag. He had to set it up. He had to sneak it in on people now and again. So he was constantly thinking about it, and I think he was ahead of his curve, ahead of the curve, as we see it now, in sort of self-documenting, and documenting the culture of the '90s. You know, if you see the O.J. White Bronco, and you see the Rodney King, and you know the Tanya Harding and all that stuff is like very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you just let the tapes speak for themselves, and it was like no narrative and interviews and everything. It just was really cool, and I just want to know if that was always the plan, or did you guys toy with the fact of doing interviews and things like that? Like,
Yeah.
Was it always a plan to have no narration and just let the tapes speak for themselves?
I'll hand it off to you, Colleen. I think that like as filmmakers, sometimes when you see something, you know, like talking heads, like there can be great talking head documentaries, but we always have this like struggle of like, no talking heads, you know? And like, you know, let's just try and tell the story a different way. And I think it was really, really bold to like let him tell the story. And I think as the film goes on, you realize like, wait, there's not anybody coming on here and telling me what to think, except for Shannon. You know, you just better mind your own fucking business.
Yeah, I want to say that since Taryn came on, the intention was to do it, you know, with complete Shannon's footage and no talking heads. And before that and after that, we had other people try to help us that said it couldn't be done And even while we were doing it, people said, "You're not going to be able to pull that off," you know. And so she was really confident, and very
Yeah.
grateful.
I think I think, like, these two were fearless in the edit, and it's honestly really impressive to say we're gonna cut this thing without any talking heads, and I really admire them both for digging in and making something that's incredibly unique, and I hope, when we got into the festival, we were just grateful to be in this festival, and I would be grateful if they were like, sure, you guys can come in, you'll be over here, you know, it's cool. And they were like, great, you know, but they put us on like a Friday night, you know, prime time, and they've treated us well, and what we hope as filmmakers, and people who love music and people who love films, that it'll be recognized as something that's really unique and that was very adventurous for you know, for a film, and that filmmakers alike would say like, damn, how'd you guys do that? That was like really incredible, and that's our hope, because I think that's how this film can reach a broader audience. So you know, we want people talking about this film and saying, not saying like, wow, it's a great Blind Melon documentary, you know? And it's like, no, this film is about, you know, a person who filmed their life for 5 solid years and was very, very detailed and told his own story to us, you know? And like, I'm not sure I've ever seen anything told entirely with that kind of footage. So I'm just trying to give you guys some talking points. My elevator pitch. One more, come on.
One more question?
Danny,
Yeah.
would you say something about how you came to meet Shannon and your personal relationship with the band?
Oh, yeah.
The
Sure.
question was, how did you come to meet Shannon and form a personal relationship with him and the band?
I was on the 120 Minutes tour, MTV tour, which is interesting because it has a presence in the film. And I was photographing the band live. And they were on tour. It was Blind Melon live, Public Image Limited, and Big Audio Dynamite. Yeah. And so I ended up, you know, I was there to photograph live, and we were all in this like, I just remember us all being in this like underground garage, and the band was riding in like an RV, and I always at the time, you know, carried a portfolio with me, and I got my start in hip hop music, and so I had a lot of like Public Enemy and LL Cool J and like, you know, Nas and stuff like that, and I was carrying my portfolio around with me, and when Live was, you know, going to do some press or whatever, had a little downtime, and we were all hanging out in this parking lot, and I set up a little shot that I was gonna shoot live in and set a light up and stuff, and these guys were all sitting around, you know, by the RV, just shooting the shit and whatever, and then I went and said hello, and I was like, hey man, can one of you guys like stand in for this photo, just so I can get a Polaroid, you know? And we started talking, and like, I was like, man, I really like these guys, and I pulled out my portfolio and showed them my pictures, and long story short, we got along, and they said, when we come to New York, you should do some photos with us, and so I did, and we just became fast friends, and I started to, you know, go in the recording studio with them, go on tour with them, and it was just a great relationship and a friendship. And I remember at one point, I played the harmonica a little bit, and like my grandfather played the harmonica, and like, you know, I made the mistake, or, you know, for better or for worse, I said to Shannon, I said, I play a little harmonica, and he was like, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And we were at a Blind Melon, Soundgarden, Neil Young show in New Jersey at the Art Center, and exit 124. And so I said I play the harmonica or whatever, you know. And Shannon was like, oh yeah, and he loved to poke people, and he loved to put people on the spot. So he was like, yeah, you should come up and play with us, you know, tonight. And I'm like, Soundgarden, Neil Young, and I was like, no. Listen, I played for my mom, and I played at a barbecue once, and he was like, Danny, man, it's all one big barbecue. we kind of went over the song a little bit, and they do this, like, we did change, and there was like a little breakdown, they did like a Dear Mr. Fantasy Jam in the middle, and I'm sorry, Rogers, that I took your solo. They gave me Rogers' solo, and I was hooked. I felt like I nailed it. And so anyway, I still play harmonica to this day, and I play in a blues band. I've been playing for like 30 years, and I can thank Shannon for that, and Blind Melon for that matter. We all just became fast friends. And funny enough, the last time I saw Shannon, we were at the Trade Winds in New Jersey. They played a show there, and I sat in with the band and had a great time. And the band had just found out that they were going to go to the Bridge School benefit, which was Neil Young's benefit concert that he and his wife had put together to educate severely handicapped children. And it's always a great time. And my God, it was like a dream come true. We were all like, wow, we're gonna go, hang out with Neil Young and stuff. And so I said, fellas, I'll see you later. And Shannon said, Danny, we're going to Uncle Neil's, man. Don't forget your harmonica. And I was like, all right, let's go. And it was going to be a barbecue, and we never got to it. But that's the short story. All right.
Okay, one more, any more?
One more?
Last question.
Yeah, a lot of the footage is like round and connected to the camera. Was that Shannon's intention, or was that the technology of the camera?
That was a special lens that he put on the camera. It was a fisheye camera. So about half the footage, not half, I would say the first quarter of the tapes that we got were VHS-C, and then the last 3 quarters were high 8, and I would say 90% of it had that fisheye lens on, yeah.
Before we go, I was like a little haphazard, but I want to make sure that we thank the people in this audience like properly that just helped us. So Linda Narvaez, Sam Bersky and Oliver Ricardi, Shauna Taser, Dave Kluber, who did a great job on sound, Kevin, who did all of our music, helped us clear all this crap in the film. That was amazing music that I had no business laying underneath, and he figured out a way to clear it all. And then of course the band and Lisa and Nico. Anna, his sister, and her little Grace, who's in the film, his sister.
Shout out to Keith Fisher for the early years. He put in
Yes.
a lot of hours wherever you are.
Paul Cummings in the house.
Dan Landau for helping me a lot, just thinking through a lot of the film as well. Liz Rao
And our family.
watching.
And you guys for
All
being
our
here.
families.
Laura Turner Garrison watched it. I'm forgetting people.
And
Thank
Shannon.
you.
Thank you.
And Shannon. Oh my God.
Thank you very much.
Please remember to vote.